Hey beautiful souls, it's Becca here, and today's episode is going to be one of the rawest and realest conversations I've ever had with you. Because today I want to talk about emotional eating, how it can take over our lives when we're carrying pain, anger, guilt, or even when our hormones shift after menopause. This is my story too. I went from being anorexic. There was a point where I just didn't even think about eating. It had gone that far. I was terrified of gaining weight. And then that coin flipped and I went to being obese and using food as comfort to the point where I was pre-diabetic. And it's always a form of control or punishment all at the same time. And even now, there are moments when I still overeat. When I feel angry, then I feel guilty. And that guilt cycle can feel endless. I also quit smoking, which, by the way, is one of the hardest things I've ever done. I stopped smoking for like 8 years and restarting again. And I thought quitting would be just so easy, but it's been a lot harder than I thought. And somehow food has become my new cigarette. It just gave me that hit, that temporary relief, that sense of, oh, I can breathe now. Except afterwards, I didn't feel relief. I felt shame again. So if ever you found yourself in that loop, the one where you promise yourself, this time will be different, and then you end up eating the thing you swore you wouldn't, I want you to know, again, you are not broken, you are human. So let's talk about what happens in the brain when we emotionally eat. So let's talk about what's actually happening scientifically when emotional eating takes over. It's when we feel strong emotions like anger, sadness, loneliness. Our brain activates the amygdala, the thing that I talk about quite often, which is basically our emotional alarm system. And it sends out distress signals. And that's why our body wants comfort. So the brain yet again releases cortisol, the stress hormone. And cortisol increases cravings. I mean, this cortisol and the amygdala has got a lot to answer for, I'm telling you. But the cravings that we seem to get is for high fat and high sugar foods, because those foods trigger a dopamine release, and it's the same good feel-good chemical linked to addiction. That dopamine rush is like a warm hug for the nervous system. For a few minutes, it numbs the pain, and it's not about weakness. It's, again, a survival thing. When I was anorexic, food was about control. I'd come out of something that I had no control over. And it was the one thing that I could control. It was the one thing that, in a world that felt unpredictable, and I could rule over that. But healing from that didn't mean I suddenly developed a healthy relationship with food. What happened instead was what psychologists call the pendulum effect, when your body and brain swing from one extreme to the other. After years of deprivation, my body became hypersensitive to hunger cues. And this is where your ghrelin levels, the hormone that tells you to eat, becomes overactive. Then your leptin, which tells your body you're full, doesn't work properly anymore. So once the restriction ends, your body panics. It's terrified of starving again. Every binge isn't about greed. It's your biology saying, please feed me. I don't know when you'll withhold again. And emotionally, after years of using control to cope, losing that control can feel terrifying. So we eat to fill the space that the fear leaves behind. For me, anger is still my biggest trigger. When I feel unseen, unheard, or hurt, my first instinct isn't to shout, it's to eat. I'm not saying I don't shout. I've already admitted on another podcast that sometimes, it happens. But my first instinct now is to eat. I feel stressed, I need some chocolate. I feel stressed, I need to eat anything that's sweet and comforting. And it's because anger is an energy. It's the body like preparing for action. So when we suppress that anger, that energy has nowhere to go. So it turns inwards and food becomes the outlet. But after the anger comes the guilt. The guilt lights up the same stress circuits in the brain as anger. So you end up in a biological feedback loop. Anger, eat, guilt, stress, then more cravings. It's just a never-ending spiral. That's why it's not as simple as just having willpower. You can't logic your way out of a brain that's wired to soothe pain with dopamine. And let's be honest, menopause changes everything too. Our estrogen levels drop, and estrogen actually helps regulate serotonin, the mood balancing chemical. Lower serotonin means more mood swings, more anxiety, and low motivation. At the same time, declining estrogen can increase insulin resistance, which means the body stores more fat, especially around the belly, even when we're eating the same amount as before. That alone can mess with your sense of control. And when the emotional storms of menopause meet the biological drive to seek comfort, food becomes that old friend again. When I quit smoking, I thought I'd finally be free. But what I didn't realise is that smoking wasn't just nicotine. It was ritual. It was a breath, a pause, a coping mechanism. And when I removed it, I didn't replace it with something soothing. I replaced that with eating too. Now, this is called transfer addiction, when the brain swaps one dopamine source for another, because it's not the substance we're addicted to, it's the relief. So how do we break these cycles, the ones that our brain have developed that gives the signals to the body? It's not by dieting, it's not by punishment, but it's by listening. Here's what I've learned. When I crave food, I stop and ask, what am I actually hungry for? Sometimes it's rest, sometimes it's safety, sometimes it's to scream into a pillow because I'm angry, and I never learn how to express that safely. Healing emotional eating starts with giving your emotions a voice, not stuffing them down. The whole reason I started this podcast was to voice everything. And this is how podcasting is helping me. Now, you can also journal before eating, not about the calories, just about the feelings that you're having when you want to reach for the wrong type of food. I'm always big into breathing, so deep breathing or walking, going for a walk when I feel the urge to binge. I mean, that's not always the best thing when it comes to me, because it's normally at night when I'm sitting and relaxing. The last thing I feel like doing is going out for a walk in the dark and meeting up with teenagers that are just, it's crazy around here, let's just say that. But the deep breathing, that suits me better. But, if you're one of these that would like to just go for a walk, go for a walk when you feel like eating, binge eating. Sounds silly, but it's a way of pausing your thinking. Like, protein-rich foods stabilise your blood sugar and reduce cravings. But what's most important is to give yourself self-compassion. This is something else that I talk about a lot. Giving yourself some self-compassion. You can't shame yourself into healing. And the problem is, this is what a lot of us do. We shame ourselves for reaching out for the food or not reaching out for the food. And you can't shame yourself into making anything better. It absolutely slows down the healing process. So the only thing you can do is love yourself into balance. If you're listening to this right now and you're nodding through tears, please know this. You are not weak, you are not broken, and I have to tell you this every time, because you are not weak, you are not broken. Your body has simply been trying to protect you in all the wrong ways. Just like before, it's brain signals that we need to change. It's not because of who we are as people. The goal isn't perfection, it's always peace. Peace with food, peace with your body, peace with the emotions that you once had to numb. And if you're walking that journey now, I'm walking it with you, unapologetically, honestly, and with deep, deep love. Thank you for listening to Be Yourself Unapologetically. If this episode spoke to you, again, please share it with someone who needs to know that they're not alone. Until next time, be kind to your body, gentle with your mind, and unapologetically yourself.